We're going live. We're going live. So people can join me now. Hello, who has joined me? I'm going to put the link so that others can join. I'm going to put the link on several pages so others can join us. Hi, Jill. I'm going to post the link. So we have a few more minutes. I'm going to put the link on another page. Hey, KWI Bonafide. I'm just going to put the link on another page so some more people can join us. Hi, Jill. Hi, Corral. Good to see you. So look forward to a lovely book reading session this afternoon. And we're waiting for a few more people to sign in before we get started. How is everyone doing this afternoon? It's so nice and sunny. Glorious weather out there. If it wasn't hashtag stay home, we'd be on a beach somewhere, right? Oh well, maybe one day soon we can venture out far from home when we're allowed to go. Hope you all are doing well this afternoon. I'm going to share the link. Let's see. One more. Let me share the link with one more group, and then we can get started. Okay, we're live. Right. So let's see. Are you hearing me? Let me know. Let me know if you're hearing me. And I'll check the messages. Right, so now, oh, hello Inez, good to have you on board. We'll wait one more minute and then we'll get started. So good to see you, Inez, Jill, Corral, lovely to have you here this afternoon. I'll just give one more minute and then we'll get started, because I know a few people said they wanted to join us this afternoon. So I'm just giving them a chance to sign on. I know one in particular had difficulty accessing the website. So I'm hoping he can get on. All right, now let's get started. Welcome to everyone this afternoon. So good to have you. I want to thank you sincerely. I know it's a Saturday afternoon and people could be, busy doing things, but I'm so happy that you're here for the book reading. What I'd like to do is just introduce some of the books that I've written over the years, and then we'll get started on reading from Goodbye Frying Pan, Hello Fire. So, just to introduce you to some of my publications, one of the most recent ones, Where Are My Car Keys? This is a memoir based on my mother's journey with Alzheimer's disease. So it covers a 10-year period where my mother showed the first signs and symptoms of Alzheimer's until her eventual death in January 2018. And I thought it would be a good way to honor my mom by writing about her journey, and also to help families who have loved ones suffering from Alzheimer's to deal with it in some way. I did the children's companion book as well, right? And I did the illustrations. Is That My Granny? So it talks about Alzheimer's as seen through the eyes of my nephew, and all the stages that he observed in his grandmother. Another book, Red Car Long Legs. This talks about my life living and working in Southern California. So I lived and worked in Southern California from 1999 to 2004. And I worked in the fresh fruit and vegetable industry and had many, many adventures working for Boscovich Farms and Dole. So last week, we read from Red Car Long Legs. And if you missed it, we have the video up on Jennylynd James writer page. So you can check out the Facebook page and see the video if you missed it last week. Another book that I've written, Derivé, or drivé, as we say in Trinidad, and it means to roam around. And in some cases, this describes my life. I've lived in 4 different countries, and while living in those countries, I had to travel frequently for work. But drivé talks about going back to Trinidad and Tobago, the country of my birth, and visiting my parents, my brother and his family over the years, and taking foreign friends back to Trinidad to visit. So it's a collection of stories, some amusing ones, some sad ones, like the death of my father, but very great, exciting read. And it talks too about feeling like a tourist in my own country, Trinidad and Tobago. So that's Dairy Vein. My first memoir that I wrote was Escape from Ireland. And this describes my life in Ireland. I was there from 2004 to December 2010. And in this book, I talk about what life was like as a new immigrant in Ireland. And so we read from this book 2 weeks ago. And for anyone who missed it, please do check out the video. All right. So thank you for joining us. After I left Ireland, now let's see who's here. Oh, Magda. Hello, Magda. Oh, Camillo. Good to see you. Thanks for joining us. Michelle. Very nice to have you. So lovely to have the whole group here. And I'm so happy you were able to join us this afternoon. So this afternoon we are reading from Goodbye Frying Pan, Hello Fire. After leaving Ireland during the recession, where I lost just about everything, I lost my business, my house, my car, I was trying to figure out where to go. As a Canadian citizen, I had lived and I'd gone to school in Montreal, Quebec. But in moving back to Canada, or thinking to move back to Canada, I didn't think it would have been an easy transition, especially for my child, because she didn't speak French. So I decided to move to an English-speaking part of Canada. And that's how we ended up in Toronto. So this book covers what life was like in the first 2 years moving to Toronto. I had friends in Montreal, but I didn't know anybody in Toronto. When I say I didn't know anybody, no one. Okay, so it was quite a risk moving here. And this book talks about the early days and the first 2 years and all the trials and tribulations and trying to survive in this big city. So I'll read the introduction. I ran a business promoting Caribbean food as a new entrepreneur in the Republic of Ireland during the boom years of the Celtic Tiger. When the Irish economy crashed under the burden of recession, I decided to fold up the business and relocate to Toronto, Canada. My Irish experiences were so profound and life-changing, I felt motivated to write the memoir Escape from Ireland, to capture the essence of this unique adventure. However, nothing prepared me for the challenges of the initial years settling in Toronto. I had to start a new career with no Canadian experience, rent a home with no references, and accomplish basic tasks like setting up a bank account, getting credit with no credit history. This required complex psychological acrobatics to understand the new culture and what was considered acceptable or not. As a single mother with a teenage daughter and no safety net of family and friends in the city, I battled with the extra pressure of trying to provide for our family. Meeting other newcomers with similar relocation stories encouraged me to write about my trials. Understanding the behavior and skills required to settle and feel a sense of belonging in the city of Toronto is an ongoing challenge. Goodbye Frying Pan, Hello Fire describes the initial feeling of despair in moving from a bad situation in my former home, which was in Ireland, to one that felt explosive and insurmountable. I want to share my struggles and successes with readers so they can be empowered in learning they're not alone, especially new immigrants. Through continuous perseverance, one can move on to create a new life. So that's the introduction. Anybody here? Let's see. For all the listeners, how many live in Toronto or have moved here within the past 5 to 10 years? Just put your answer in the comments section. Last 5 to 10 years, anybody? No? Just take a little water. Okay, now Ina said, now I knew Grace when I lived in Montreal. She's a mutual friend of ours. I didn't know that she lived in Toronto. The last time I spoke to her, we were students in Montreal in undergrad and graduate studies. And then we lost touch. So when I moved here, I didn't know that I knew people because we were out of touch. Any other comments? Just put your comment or question in the comment section. All right, now in moving to Toronto, the preamble to that is that I had a friend, a childhood friend, who lived outside of Hamilton in a small town called Stony Creek. And she offered to keep my daughter and I until I could find a job and get settled. So we didn't actually settle in Toronto first. We went to Stony Creek in Hamilton, a place I knew nothing about, but because my friend said, come and stay with us, I decided to stay at her place. Right? So I call her Joyce in the story. And I'm going to tell you what happened in the first few days. Now this was December 2010 when we left Ireland. And it snowed for the first time in decades in Ireland. Everything had shut down, so it took us almost 3 days to leave. We slept in the airport on the floor, okay? Then we had to change planes in the Netherlands and then get an Air Canada flight to Toronto airport. So we had been traveling for days until we finally got to Toronto, and then Joyce sent her friend to collect us and drive us to Stony Creek. So we settled in the room she provided for us, and Joyce had to go off to work the next day. So it was December 23rd. A few hours elapsed before I was startled by a loud roar under my bedroom. Was that an earthquake or thunder? It took a few seconds to get my bearings and determine where I was. Because remember, I still had jet lag at that time, right? I then realized the noise was the garage door opening and closing, because the bedroom was just above the garage door. I heard shuffling downstairs and went to investigate. Joyce came in the kitchen with many bags from Christmas shopping. Hello, Joyce. You have a really nice house. Hi, Tiffany. Did you get a good rest? Asked Joyce. Yes. Now, even though I'd slept, I'm still tired. How was work? I asked. Oh, it was quiet today. Most people left early. She brought in many bags of groceries. And then, all of a sudden, her nose started to twitch. Ew, what's that smell? Something smells really bad. I wondered what all the fuss was about. She said, oh my God, it's your daughter's hair. Tell her to wash her hair. I don't know how she reached that conclusion. I said, okay, don't worry. I couldn't smell myself and never paid too much attention to other people unless they were wearing an exceptionally fragrant perfume. But what I realized is that North Americans were very obsessed with showering and perfuming and using hand sanitizers and artificial fragrances more so than Europeans. Many Irish friends I know didn't bathe for days. They smell like humans, okay? And nobody made a fuss. So we were going to have to make many adjustments in moving to Canada. Joyce was overly fussy, and I couldn't remember her being that fussy, but then she was a childhood friend. And almost 2 or 3 decades had passed since I had been in the same space with her. All our shoes were to be removed at the front door and placed on mats. We were not used to that in Ireland. You walked around with shoes anywhere. There was to be no walking on the wooden floor. that could scratch her floor and decrease the home's resale value. A plastic strip or carpet runner was put on the major thoroughfares for heavy traffic areas. Later in the afternoon, I took a chance and tiptoed on the precious wooden floor in my socks for a laugh when nobody was looking. But Tiffany saw me. I said, "Oh, Tiffany, look at me." She laughed hysterically and then she said, "Stop it, Mommy. They will get mad." We were asked to put our coats in a special closet near the front door. Coats, boots, scarves, gloves. We piled in all our winter gear. But then I noticed the day after that the family's belongings were gradually emptied from the closet. Who would want to acquire the bad smell of visitors' clothing? I held my tongue and tried to abide by the rules since we had no other place to go. We unpacked slowly and Joyce's family was to gather at her home Christmas Day for celebrations. Joyce went out to do some last-minute shopping, and her sister Janice, who lived down the street with her 2 children, came over on Christmas Eve and offered to take my daughter and I out to the mall and also the supermarket to do some last-minute shopping. When we visited the supermarket, she picked up various food items. The place was crowded with everyone shopping in a frenzy for the last minute. I walked around as if in a daze, looking at all the unfamiliar brands and not knowing where anything was located. The layout of the supermarket was different to what I was used to in Ireland. In addition, the food products were filled with additives to fortify or change their properties. I saw orange juice with omega-3, which I knew was a fish oil. They were very strange Franken foods, I call them. She couldn't understand why I took so long to make a food choice. Come on, we don't have all evening. I have to go to other shops," she said. I hesitated in front of the pasteurized milk section. Milk was labeled 0%, 1%, 2%, 3.5%. It came in cartons or in plastic bags. Why would anyone sell milk in plastic bags? I questioned myself. How would the bags stand in the refrigerator? Which percent should I buy? In Ireland, it was skim milk or full cream milk. I wasn't familiar with the percentages. Come on, just pick one. I reasoned that I would have to just go back another day and walk slowly through the supermarket to figure out what everything was. I felt confused and disoriented, as if in a dream. So anyway, this was the first day out in trying to shop and get oriented in Stony Creek. And a plastic bag of milk. I'd never seen that before in my life. I know those who live in Ontario, maybe it's normal for you, but it was very, very strange. And what I call the Franken foods, the fortified foods. Oh, yes. Anyway. So, before I arrived in Canada, I had been sending out applications for jobs because I knew I had to find work. I had some savings, but savings don't last forever. I had been sending out applications from Ireland and nobody answered me. So I knew the pressure would be on to find a new job. And I felt guilty to be in someone's house and not having a job. I'll just read a little bit about this. Christmas morning. I woke up at 5 a.m. Of course, I woke up at 5 because it was a 5-hour jet lag, so I was up early anyway. I decided to look online for jobs. I had already started burning through the savings I brought from Ireland. With no job in hand, this was a frightening scenario. So as not to wake anyone in the nearby bedrooms, I went downstairs and sat in the living room. I turned on the lights, switched on my computer. And within a few minutes, my tranquility was interrupted. Joyce tramped along the stairs carrying a reading lamp, and she was visibly shaken. Don't use the overhead fluorescent lights. They burn up too much electricity. Use a small lamp instead. I said, okay, that's fine, that's fine. She turned off the lights, and I was shaken. But anyway, as a visitor, I was supposed to adjust to the rules and just follow instructions. I'm looking for a job online, I said, trying to sound cheerful. Oh, that's good. You should find something soon. It was Christmas Day. I seriously doubted recruiters would be available that day or for the rest of the week to interview me. But it was the beginning of quite a bit of friction. Now, when you are staying as a guest in someone's home, how long do you think it takes before you become a burden? Let me see some comments here. How long do you think is the ideal length of time to stay at someone's home before you overstay your welcome? Anybody has some comments? Put some comments in the comment box. Let me hear what you think. And then I'll tell you how long we stayed. Anybody? Let's hear some comments. One week, maybe two. Okay, any other comments? Anybody else? I'll take a guess how long we stayed before it got explosive. Maximum 1 month. 4 days max. Oh, there's Mrs. Birch. Good that you could join us. Well, we actually stayed 4 weeks, and it reached the height of discomfort that I decided to move out. Okay, so because 4 weeks was long enough, I hadn't found a job, and tensions were flaring. So one day when I was told that I was using up all the gas and the electricity and whatever, I calmly packed. We packed all our things and moved to a nearby motel in Stony Creek. Not a hotel, a motel, because I was living off savings, and if I moved to a fancy hotel, we'd have nothing left. So we moved to, one of those stinky little motels that you pass when you're driving through a small town. That's where we moved. A motel in Stony Creek. So I'll tell you what happened, on the first day. My daughter turned up her nose in disapproval as we entered the parking lot. Ew, is that where we will be staying? Not wanting to alarm her, I said, this is only temporary. Don't worry. However, I was not sure when we would be able to move out of that place. I went to the little room occupied by the proprietor and his helper. He appeared to be around 60 years old, of medium build with greasy salt and pepper hair and mustache. Good day, I said. I've booked a room for a week. All rooms are non-smoking, he cautioned. It's okay, I've never touched a cigarette in my life, I told him. Who's staying there with you? He asked suspiciously. It's just my daughter and me. Okay, he said. That will be $250. The room has an extra heater in the middle. You could turn this on if you need it. There's a microwave and a fridge. We clean on Thursdays and change all the sheets. Well, I was a bit shocked. I hope they change all the sheets for our arrival. Did the empty parking lot mean the residents would be arriving at night? Did people actually stay there or just use the place at night? Did the extra heater mean that the heated room was not so heated and actually needed the electric heater to be on working all the time? It was minus 15 Celsius that day. Not toasty, but at least the snow stopped. I got the key for the room, climbed back into the waiting taxi, and drove around the parking lot until we saw the number on the door. I unlocked the door and entered the room. There were 2 beds covered with dark red quilted bedspreads. Cigarette burns decorated one of the bedspreads, and the room smelled like cigarette smoke. I guess the smoking ban was not in operation. Yes, so that was our introduction to Stony Creek Motel. A stinky little motel. And that day, I went and got some bleach and I tried to disinfect all surfaces. It was quite frightening, to say the least. And the clientele too, I'll give you a few notes on them. The parking lot at the motel was always full in the mornings. I saw a few pickup trucks, vans, large old cars. I peeped through a small hole in the drapes to spy as my neighbors cursed and swore on the way out to work in the morning. They looked like construction people with rugged faces, rugged clothing, safety boots, etc. Then I heard them return at nightfall. Some were loud, some entered quietly. Lord God, deliver us from this place. That is what I would pray every morning as I woke up, turned on the computer, and looked for a job. So it was quite difficult living in that place, and also to have a 15-year-old with me. She was going to school and nobody would know where we lived. Nobody. Because, it was an embarrassment, to say the least. All right. Any questions? Now I'm going to tell you a little bit about searching for a home and a school, because it's something we were not used to. The way it was organized, or the way it works in North America, is where you live determine what school your child went to. And since we didn't know where she should go to school, how were we going to know where we would live? So I went online, did a Google search for Toronto's top 10 schools, because I realized there was no job in Stony Creek. Oh yeah, that's how long we were at the motel. At least 3 weeks. It was quite a long time at the motel. I'd say at least 3 weeks. But we had to move out, but I couldn't figure out where to live, and it was January 2011. Minus 15 degrees most of the time. Most of the time. But I'll tell you how I tried to determine where we would live. After 1 week at the motel, my endurance was being tested to the max. I knew we could not survive in the small town where there were no job opportunities in the area. I needed to move to the big city of Toronto and try my luck. So I sent out applications to many job websites, job recruiting websites, and tried to find work in the food industry. I began making a plan as to where to live in the city. I looked online for Toronto's top 10 schools. I even asked a few people in the street which schools were the best ones, but of course nobody knew me or what I was talking about. So, life by Google, I decided to use the internet as a guide. Eventually, I came across a rating that listed the top 10 schools based on scores that students made in provincial testing in English and math, as well as the percentage of students who went to university. My goal was to visit these schools and get my daughter enrolled in one of them. The catch, however, was that we needed to live in the area around the school, or I could not get her enrolled. This was so different to Ireland, where one could enroll in any school you wanted. Even the real estate websites did not offer guidance as to the schools, so they would show properties, but not which schools were in the district. I decided to just pick 4 and walk around the neighborhoods of the street. The first area I visited was around Earl Haig High School. This appeared as the 4th in the list of Toronto's top 10 high schools. It was my first time venturing into the north of Toronto. I took a train from a bus from Stony Creek to Hamilton, and then a train from Hamilton to Toronto, and then from the Union Station in Toronto, I got into the subway and traveled to the north of Toronto to visit this school near the Shepherd and Young subway. When I emerged from the subway, I thought I was in Korea or Japan. Many shops were owned by Koreans and Japanese, looking at the signs on the shops. I walked around the neighborhood in awe at the large houses, possibly worth many millions of dollars in that neighborhood. Everything was big, so big cars and massive 3- and 4-door garages. It looked like an area with lots of money. Ostentatious stone houses were perched on immaculately landscaped minuscule plots. And Earl Haig High School was in the middle of the big houses. It was minus 10 degrees. I could feel the cold penetrating straight to my toes, even though I wore warm socks and new winter boots. I shuffled along in the snow and climbing over snowbanks at some corners. Nobody was walking except me. Everyone was driving. As I entered the school, I realized the population was also predominantly Asian. I wondered how my daughter would survive if everyone spoke a second language. I went straight to the office to ask about admission requirements. There were 3 women in the office. One walked over to me looking over her reading glasses and said, "Yes, may I help you?" "I would like to find out about admission requirements for my daughter," I said timidly. "We have recently moved to Toronto from Ireland." She possibly sensed my insecurity and pounced like a proud lion on its prey. This, I think, was a typical human reaction. Ability to exert power and dominance over those perceived to be inferior. "We don't take ESL students here," she said. "You have to live in this neighborhood to be accepted anyway, and furthermore, we are full to capacity." Did I not tell her we moved from Ireland? She probably assumed that was part of Africa and we spoke bush language. It took me a few seconds to realize ESL meant English as a second language. I had never heard the term before. I realized that school secretaries were the gatekeepers and had to be pampered in order to get information. I left the office defeated, knowing the only weapon would be to find housing in the neighborhood. So that was just the first adventure in trying to navigate the school system and how to get a child in school. The secretaries were in charge, and you had to go past them to get admission into schools. So anyway, needless to say, walking around neighborhoods at sub-zero temperatures, trying to find a school, it wasn't easy. Any questions or comments? Oh, you know about the administration at Earl Haig. Yes, difficult people. And many of the top schools, I think, would have been like that. Now, another dilemma I had, if you're looking to rent an apartment, you need to have a job because they want proof of employment and they want references. I had no employment and no references. So, can someone tell me what I had to do? When we finally found a good school and a neighborhood and I found an apartment I wanted to rent, what did I have to do to secure this apartment? Because, it's kind of like chicken before the egg. Right? Several situations there. Does anybody have any idea? Because I had no job, no references, because nobody knew me. Right? But I wanted to get. And most of the best schools were in wealthy neighborhoods with very few rentals. Mostly properties that people owned. Very few rental properties. Usually, if you're renting a place, usually when you're renting a place, you show proof of employment and then you give a reference, a friend or your doctor or your former landlord or somebody. No references. Any other comments? Right, that's correct. Earl said pay up front. When I saw the place that I wanted, I offered to pay up front. I said I could pay 6 months if you wanted. I'll give you all the money because I had brought my savings with me. So paying up front or offering to pay up front was an option that was accepted. Once I'd become self-employed, I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do. It was January 2011. I just arrived and I had my suitcases. So in terms of self-employment, I had no clue at the time what I could do. None whatsoever. Right, now I'm going to tell you a little bit about the job search. Oh, Jackie's here. Hi, Jackie. Good that you could join us this afternoon. The adventures of searching for a job. So I'll tell you about one of my first outings. Remember, we were still in Stony Creek. Most of the jobs that were advertised were in Toronto. The big challenge after the holidays was to continue looking for work. I sent numerous resumes out before arriving in Canada, but nobody would entertain the idea of recruiting anyone based in a foreign country like Ireland. So one day, I was taking an early morning walk at minus 12 degrees to get fresh air, and I spied a poster advertising a refugee center in Hamilton, which gave assistance in resume writing. I thought, was I a refugee in need of help? Was the service only given to the poor and destitute from a foreign country? Could I not find a job on my own without their help? Well, the answers to these questions were clear. I could not find a job, and we were going to be poor and destitute as I plowed my way through the savings I brought from Ireland. I had a master's degree, a doctorate in food science from McGill University, and a postdoctoral research fellowship. In addition, I also worked at least 15 years in the food industry, but I could not even get an interview. What was I going to do? What was I doing wrong? I had worked in the United States, the Caribbean, Ireland, Latin America. I was sure nobody traveled around the world more than I had. I had spoken at conferences, audited companies, I had written peer-reviewed publications, published my own textbook. I dropped my pride that day and decided to make an appointment with a counselor at the refugee center. The worst scenario, I thought, is that they would send me packing and tell me I was not a refugee. Now, what would people think about that? Going to a refugee center for help. Anybody, any comments? Would you do that? Any comments? No comments. I guess people are shocked. Anyway, that's what I did. I went to the center. I saw numerous posters with faces of women from so many countries, all colors and creeds. And when I got there, there was one person in a long cotton desert dress with a hijab. I thought she must have been freezing. It was -12 that day with deep snow on the ground. When my name was called, I went into the associate's office and held my breath. She was a young Asian woman with olive skin, long ponytail, neatly dressed, and a friendly face. I could tell that she was probably from the Philippines or Malaysia. I took a copy of my resume for her to review. She looked at the document and took a deep breath, went to get a drink of water, and came back. Was my resume so bad that she had to pause? What was she thinking? I put down every academic qualification and all my work experience in the food industry in chronological order. Should I leave my fate in the hands of this young girl? Those were some of my thoughts. She started by asking me about my job search thus far. Even though I could use the agency's programs for resume review, unfortunately, as a Canadian citizen, I did not qualify for their classes on interview practicing, driving lessons, or other services. I told her I could not even get an interview with the current resume. Nobody would invite me for an interview despite all the qualifications and years of experience. She showed me how to search government websites, job codes, how to create a functional resume instead of the chronological one that I had. My resume was outdated. Since computers were doing the job screening, not humans, I had to adjust everything. If the advertisement asked for 5 years experience, then you had to put 5 years in the resume. I told her, I have 15 years experience. Why can't I put that? Surely that would mean more. She said the only thing it would mean is that you would not be invited for an interview. The market was tough and very few were hiring. In addition, most jobs were not advertised. But how can I find a job if it's not advertised? I asked. She said you have to do cold calling. You call and find out who's the hiring manager and you speak to them. So cold calling, I had my work cut out for me. So those are some of the dilemmas. And even though I was not a refugee, I realized that I received so much help from the refugee center. I kind of wish that I was, because they were getting additional help in interview practice. And I was quite rusty because I hadn't interviewed for more than a decade. So who knew what to expect in an interview? Anyway, so that was one of the adventures in resume writing and job hunting. Now another set of advice I got from discovered friends. I'll tell you what they told me too. I was looking for a full-time job for months and wondered what other avenues I could take to land the perfect opportunity. A number of factors worked against me. I had no Canadian work experience and no contacts. Try your network, everyone would say. Well, when one is new in town, unless you have family and friends to receive you, there is no network. I joined several networking groups to try to form a network and make new friends. It was challenging, but not impossible. While perusing Facebook one day, I came across an old friend from McGill. I call her Sandra. And Inez, you know who I mean. What a surprise to find she was actually living in the GTA. I sent her a friend request and a message and waited for her response. A few days passed before she replied. She was happy we reconnected. Sandra immediately invited us to her home for dinner. We were so happy at last to have a friend who could invite us over for dinner. You have no idea how it felt. This is after at least 3 months. The family lived in an area called Markham, and we were going for Easter dinner. We were greeted by the whole family and received a feast for kings, or queens as in our case. After dinner, we settled to the conversation of my getting a job. Sandra and her husband had experienced the rigors of job hunting for decades in Canada, and they had many gems of wisdom to impart. Her husband, Mark, worked for the government, and Sandra worked in private enterprise. I told them I'd revised the resume on numerous occasions and tried all different options. Getting an interview is a game. You have to repeat exactly what is stated in the advertisement, she said. Mark confirmed. If they ask for 5 years experience, you put 5 years. You cannot put everything because the computer sorting your resume will spit it out. If they ask for a bachelor's degree, you put only a bachelor's degree. I heard that story before, but I needed confirmation. I said, but I have a master's degree and a Ph.D. I have over 12 years university education. The conversation was very strange and I could not understand the logic. Only put what they ask for or you will never get to enter the door for an interview. But it would be like playing games, I said, if I only put the bachelor's degree. Would they not eventually find out I have a Ph.D.? Mark said, how would they find out? You get the interview, you get the job, and then after you've worked for a long time, then you bring up the fact that you have more qualifications. Crazy stuff. But I guess that was the game we had to play. He said, let's face it, the hiring manager would not have even half of your education or experience. I know because I've spent a long time in school, I admitted. Mark continued. He would never hire you. He would prefer to say you're overqualified or feel afraid of paying you what you're worth. Nobody aims to pay a large wage. In any case, you would be a threat to him. So you'd have to just not show all the qualifications. Nobody wants anyone too bright in the office with them. You have to dumb down to get the job. That's what he counseled. Dumb down to get the job. And that was the mantra I had to follow. Has anybody ever heard that saying, dumb down to get the job? It was the first time in my life I had heard of this or experienced it. Has that happened to anyone? So when you play dumb, you get a job, and then afterwards, then you show what you have. Anyway, so that was the experience. And I did eventually find a job. And it was through someone at choir practice. So networking did help. Someone at choir practice, can you imagine? And not sending out cold applications. That's how it worked in the city. Now, the job I got was an hour and 45 minutes commute from where I live downtown. 1 hour and 45 minutes one way. So I'd get up early in the morning because I live downtown Toronto, travel by train up to Finch subway station, then take a commuter bus up to Markham. So 1 hour and 45 minutes one way, and then in the night coming back 1 hour and 45 minutes because I had no car. right? So it was quite a sacrifice, but it had to be done. And I have a whole section on commute and the commuting and all the characters that you'd see commuting in the subway, the underground train, the buses. Many times I saw fights that would break out on the train or on the bus. And, people would step back in horror when commuters wanted to fight. So in the book, I have a lot of jokes about the fights or the near fights, near misses that we observed in the train. Sometimes, too, the underground train malfunctioned. So I'm going to read a short passage for you, which I call Trapped Underground. Okay, one fine morning as I started the commute to Finn Station, I heard a muffled announcement. Underground. On the Bloor-Danforth line, they were having signal problems at the Young University Spadina line going to North York Station. I thought nothing of this announcement and hoped the problem would clear by the time I changed train tracks and approached that area. I immersed myself in the morning newspapers and ceased to focus on the announcements, even though they continued repeatedly. As I changed from the Bloor-Danforth platform to the Young University Spadina platform going north, I noticed an excessive number of people waiting to board the train. This was because trains were so slow that more and more commuters were piling onto the platform and very few trains were running to whisk people away. The loudspeaker blared instructions to irate commuters who feared being late for work. A train is entering the station. Please stay behind the yellow line. Allow passengers to leave before entering. The notices constantly reminded passengers to observe good train etiquette. Don't charge the doors. Stand away from the doors. The train was full to capacity and people tried to squeeze into any small crevice they could find. Unfortunately, some were in the doorway or some had knapsacks that were caught when the doors closed. We had to squeeze in even more. Departure was delayed for a few seconds as angry commuters heaved silently. We finally began the slow crawl northwards and stopped at Rosedale Station. Very few passengers got off there. However, many wanted to enter the train. All standing passengers readjusted to let in a few more people. I was holding on to a metal pole and had to turn around and find another part of the pole to hang on to while staring at the back of a tall man's head. How long could I enjoy this view, I asked myself. I would have to shift in another direction at the next stop. The announcements continued. We are experiencing signal problems. You will experience longer than normal travel times northbound on the Young University Spadina line. The loudspeaker cracked and annoyed passengers. Not only were we packed in like sardines, but we were forced to listen to that awful noise of a loudspeaker delivering bad news. This train is stopping at Summerhill. Please take all your belongings as you leave. Again, few passengers left and more wanted to come in. We breathed in and made room for them. This time I changed position and turned to face some seated passengers. They were the lucky ones. They had seats. They could pretend to read their newspapers while they were staring at everybody. Between Davisville and Eglinton Station, the train stopped. We were stuck underground. There was no announcement, no movement, just silence. Nobody spoke. I looked out the window and saw a dark wall. We waited for what seemed like an eternity It was at that point that I felt my heart jump. The carriage was stuffy. Even though the air conditioning unit was working and cold air was blowing to cool down the summer heat, the train was overcrowded. What if we did not move again? We were in between stations. What if the lights went out? What if people panicked? We would all be crushed. There was no escape. We were in between two stations and packed like rats in an overcrowded train carriage. If people panicked and tried to get out, where could we go? There was nowhere to go. I almost began to cry. I felt like collapsing to the ground as my knees buckled. So to find out what happened next, please get a copy of Goodbye Frying Pan, Hello Fire. Because you need to know what happened, that trapped underground passage. And it happens many times in the Toronto subway. Who here has ridden at the Toronto subway and been trapped underground? Send me a note in the message box. How many people here have been trapped underground in the Toronto subway? Send me a message. Hello? Yes? Anybody? Anybody? Let me know if you've ever been trapped underground in that subway. It's quite nerve-wracking, especially in the summertime when it's extra hot, because the trains could get hot as well. And as I mentioned there, Nicole has experienced it, yes. Yes, it's quite nerve-wracking with the heat, being packed in like sardines. Now that's pre-COVID-19. I can't even imagine what would happen now if we were packed in there, with COVID-19, because the subways are now quite empty. But anyway, it was, I thought I'd lose my mind. I almost collapsed, really and truly. It took a lot of strength to survive that one. And to get the courage to go back in the train again, because I had to use the train to get to work every day. All right, now I'll read another passage. This section I call the Hare Effect. Now, I changed my hairstyle many times in that office where I worked in Markham, but most people had the same hairstyle every single day. So, I wrote a humorous section. It's humorous for the most part, but not really. I call it the Hare Effect, and what changing my hairstyle had on people who worked in the office, what effect it had. After a visit to Trinidad one Christmas, I returned with a very short haircut. My hair was damaged by accident, and I was forced to cut it all off to start new growth. This was the first time in my life I flaunted a short haircut. It was a bit traumatic for me. However, I proceeded. I never got used to looking at myself in the mirror with the short hair. When I returned to work with my short boy cut in January, the office was in shock. The comments were coming from all directions. What happened? You lost all your hair. Another one said, I admire your bravery. You look cute. Another one, oh, I never could do that. I would die without my hair. If they only knew it was a cosmetic accident and not planned. Well, the comments died down after the first week, and things went back to normal in that micro environment. By June, my hair had grown and I used a headband to pull back the new growth. One day, as I combed out my hair while dressing for work, I saw the beautiful large afro that had developed over time. I looked like a 1970s afro chick. I decided not to use the headband that day and leave my hair just as it was. Why should I hide my gorgeous locks? As I entered the office, the Human Resources Vice President was on her way to the ladies' room. She stared at me, and then she said, "What is wrong with your hair?" What? I was shocked at her comment. So surprised, in fact, that I could not even formulate an answer. She continued walking past me to the ladies' room, completely oblivious that she had insulted me. I entered the office and walked to my desk in a daze, unsure of what just happened. On the way to my desk, a few people noticed my afro and they said, "Oh, groovy baby." Now that was funny, that's what I expected. After boiling and stewing over the HR manager's comment, I felt it was a bit racist. Did she not know that black people had this type of hair? Was she implying that if my hair was chemically straightened, it would be correct, and that the current hair was wrong? I discussed the matter with another black woman in the office, and I decided to go and speak to Miss HR. Being politically correct in such a diverse office was not easy. However, if the person responsible for human resources in the company did not respect diversity in the workplace, this had to be addressed. I went to her office where she was seated behind the desk, working happily on her computer. She looked up and I asked if she could spare a moment. "Oh, yes, of course," she said. I told her I was very offended by what she said that morning. "You asked what was wrong with my hair," I challenged. She twitched uncontrollably and started making excuses. "Oh, it was just a translation from my language. I just made a mistake in English." Mind you, she's Malaysian. I wondered what mistake you could be making in translating into wrong in English. "Oh, I meant to say you look different. In fact, I always find you look so good despite your age." "I know your age, you know." She smiled with a twinkle in her eyes. Of course she knew my age. I gave HR my driver's license to copy so that they could have my identification on record when I started work. I did not expect anyone to be brandishing my age as a weapon against which I should be judged. So here she was, not only criticizing my hair, but ageism was coming into play. She continued, "I always find you dress professionally, even though you don't even own a car." Now, what do you think about that? Here was the VP of HR criticizing the type of hair, okay, my age, and the fact that I still look professionally put together even though I didn't own a car. Mind you, I didn't last very long at that job. What do people think about this woman? And who was I going to complain to? There was nobody to complain to. She was the vice president of HR. There's some lower ones, you know, the manager, the HR supervisor. She was the VP of HR. So anyway, it was a rude awakening to some of the beliefs and practices in the Toronto workplace. Anyway, you have to get a copy of Goodbye Frying Pan, Hello Fire to hear what happened next. And since we're just over the hour now, I'm going to end this story there, and you can find out more when you get a copy of the book. And for those who subscribe to my website, JennylyndJames.com books, I'm going to put it in the chat box. you can get a free e-copy of the book if you subscribe to my website, and encourage friends to subscribe to the website. Yes, I know people are quite upset with HR. I was too, because you're just not expecting that. But anything can happen when you throw a lot of people of all different backgrounds into an office. You just never can tell what's going to happen next. So thank you so much, everybody, for sitting through this book reading, Goodbye Frying Pan, Hello Fire, a memoir of wit and determination. It was a summary of the book. Covers the first 2 years in Toronto and all the misadventures. Very tough city to get settled into, and in some ways, I'm still trying to settle. This is year 10. I'm still trying to settle, but that's how it goes. So thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. Put some comments. Let's see some more comments. Oh, thank you so much, Inez. Glad you enjoyed the presentation. Let's see what other comments we have here. Oh, Nicole said you're almost lucky you got the job. I guess that's what they felt. So because I got the job, I should be able to put up with anything. In spite of your age. Yes, Andrea, what can we do? My age was being thrown in my face as if that was wrong too, the wrong age. Okay, Sue said, unaware to the extreme. Yes, from bad to worse. Yeah, you wouldn't expect that from an HR person, and not the HR VP. Well, you meet all sorts in the workplace, and I quit the job actually, because Sue said, "Glad you survived." I didn't survive that job. Let me put it that way. I left. I didn't have another job to go to, and they were quite shocked. I planned my own farewell luncheon too. I told them, I'm leaving. And that's why I wrote the book as a form of healing. After I left that job, I poured everything into this book to help me, reprogram the brain and settle. So this book was a product of just trying to get some healing after all the experiences in the first 2 years. So thank you so much again, everyone, for joining me. I appreciate you spending some time with me this afternoon, and hope to see you again next week when we'll do some more book readings. Thanks again. Saturday live at 5. Bye now.